everyone, I'm RRR participant Rebecca and we're here today at the Ulster Folk Museum in Cultra where we're going to do our cook-along for the Head&Heart Festival. The Ulster Folk Museum is a living history museum, which means that you'll find a bustling town filled with authentic period buildings as well as some authentic characters of a bygone era. But the budget was tight, so I had to bring my own. Do you want to follow us inside? Hi, I'm here with first person interpreter and baker extraordinaire Claire Brown, who's going to teach us how to make soda bread today. Claire, thank you very much for joining us today. Would you like to explain what a first person interpreter is?
Certainly, I'm very pleased to be here with you today. First person interpreter, what my job here in the Folk Park entails is essentially going into our archives and rooting out some of the most amazing stories that some of us may have been told by our grandparents whenever we were younger and reiterating those in a very animated way. And I do that through baking, which I absolutely love, and I think people really connect through baking and the smells. It brings you back to being a child, brings you back to better times, and especially now more than ever I think that's important.
Oh, definitely. And I think, for wellness and for self-care, like baking, it's so important, that I'd say you would agree with that.
Oh, definitely. Baking is something that's very close to my heart, as is mental health, actually. And I think that baking is a great way of de-stressing. So in these sort of times when people can feel quite alone and quite isolated, and they have been at home, certain store cupboard standards, you can bring them out and you can bake the most amazing things, and then you have created something out of literally nothing. And that's something to be really proud of, and to really it's very much in self-care.
Oh, definitely. So with a recipe like soda bread that has such a strong connection to history and the past, would you say that we can learn a lot from a recipe like that?
We really can do, and I do believe that most of our traditional recipes are here for a reason. I mean, they're written in our folklore for a reason, and a lot of what we would classify as gourmet food now, and you can buy in 5-star restaurants or even Michelin star restaurants, comes from necessity. So soda bread, the main ingredient or the sort of prize ingredient in it is bicarbonate of soda, and it was invented by a French scientist in the 1790s. So it wasn't until then that we can actually have this risen bread, and it became so important to a traditional way of life here in not just Ulster but in all of Ireland. So the men, they heavily relied on this because there was only 4 ingredients in it, but it was very high in protein and very high in carbohydrates. But the buttermilk in it as well, whenever they took a flagon of buttermilk out to the fields and their soda bread, that gave them the slow release burn energy that they needed to work in the fields. So I do think it is good to not only relive these recipes on a daily basis, but also to remember them because our ancestors lived them every day.
Definitely. And I guess they're so good for you. Like, you're saying they sustain someone all day. I guess it's something to remember when we're stuffing ourselves full of sugar and that, isn't it? But
they really do. I mean, they are high in carbohydrates, but the protein aspect because of the buttermilk is absolutely phenomenal. And buttermilk it's like liquid gold, to be quite honest with you. In Ireland and in India, we would use it quite a bit in baking and in cooking. The rest of the world, as it's a byproduct of butter, so the rest of the world sort of discarded it as such. We don't discard anything here. I mean, going back to this time period of sort of 1910, 1920, we lived green. We didn't try to, we did, because why wouldn't you? Everything that you needed was on your doorstep, and it pretty much still is. And buttermilk is it's sort of overlooked in the supermarkets today, but it's absolutely phenomenal. And if you're a baker of any remote means, it gives a total different taste to your bacon. You'll never turn back to normal milk again.
Well, you seem to know so much about baking, so it must mean so much to you to be able to share these recipes and cook them in your own time.
It really does. I have a strong connection with baking in my family, and it runs through my grandmother's genes, which would be the Maxwell strain of my family. And for many years, many of the boys were bakers in the Ormeau Bakery, and they would have been very much into baking fancy breads. Lo and behold, they thought that the baking sort of gene as such had dropped off for the last generation, and then all of a sudden I came along at 18 and decided to have a go, and I seem to have it in my fingers, I want to say, so I'm thankful for my ancestors for that. So it is something that's very, very close to my heart, but also it's a great way of, you know, if you're having a bad day or you're feeling a wee bit stressed or you're feeling a wee bit angry or you just want something really reminiscent of something maybe your grandmother made you whenever you were younger, you know, getting the baking bowl out and throwing something together like a soda bread mix, which takes literally 10 minutes to make and 20 minutes to cook. I mean, it makes you feel so much better after it, so it is incredibly important.
So would you say places like here at the Ulster Folk Museum is a great place to exercise that self-care and take some time to do something enjoyable for yourself?
Oh, most definitely, and we look forward very much to welcoming everybody back when we finally do get open. But until then, hopefully what we're doing today will sort of help with mental health. I do think what we do here, whether you're 1 or 101, you really take away an experience. It's about the nostalgia, it's about the homes, it's about really learning how to love yourself. The Head&Heart Festival that this will be going out in, I think, is an absolutely amazing idea. I mean, the self-care that people need, especially now more than ever, is absolutely phenomenal. And I think if I can have a small part to play in that, and even the folk park can have a small part to play in that, then that is just worth gold. It really is.
Well, we're so excited to have you here anyways, and we're really excited to see this recipe in action. So would you mind having a wee demonstration for us now?
Certainly, no problem at all.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Claire.
Well, thank you very much for Rebecca for interviewing me. I think it would only be polite to show you how to make some soda bread now. I do always use a cup now. I use a tin mug whenever I measure my flour. But if you're doing it in grams, mugs can kind of vary. It would take roughly about 100 to 125 grams, and it's 2 of those. So really 200 to 250 grams of flour. The nice thing about soda bread is you don't have to be exact with the measurements. You get to know the feel of it, and it's only 4 ingredients, which is quite nice. Quite easy to work with. So once you have your 2 cups of flour in your baking bowl, the next most crucial ingredient is a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, and you just sprinkle that in. And then to add some flavour, salt. And I say a good pinch of salt, but to me that's maybe 1/3 to 1/2 of a teaspoon. I'm going to sprinkle that in. I think one of the most important things is actually to take your wooden spoon and actually mix it at this point. And the reason for that is there's nothing worse than mixing your buttermilk in and then realising that you've got a big bit of bicarbonate of soda in the centre of it. So give that a good bit of a mix. And it puts all those lovely ingredients together. And you pop a wee well in the centre, and that's where you want to pop your buttermilk. So buttermilk, if anybody is buying it, it's right beside the normal milk on and pretty much everywhere sells it. But if you prefer to make your own, you can do that as well. So all you need is some full fat milk, and you need some white vinegar or some lemon juice, and you pop it into it, and what it does is it curdles it, and that's your instant buttermilk. So I always start with 1/2 carton, so it comes in pints. So 1/2 pint straight in the centre. And just give that a mix. Now this won't be enough, but it gives you an idea of how your mixture is going to come together. So the idea is the buttermilk is going to bring the mixture together, but you don't want it too wet. If it's too wet, what happens is, because soda bread cooks quite quickly, you end up with it being cloggy and really, really damp on the inside. So it starts to go quite crumbly whenever you mix it. And then what we're going to do is pop a little bit more buttermilk in. And if you pop too much buttermilk in and you think it's too wet, don't worry, because you can always add more flour. It's not an exact recipe, it's not an exact art, and it'll still be absolutely beautiful. So you can see that's starting to come together now. And this is the most enjoyable part, getting your hands into it. So roll up my sleeves. And what you're wanting is really to form this into a ball. Now, you can see the way that's sticking to my hands quite a bit. So that tells me there's just a little bit too much buttermilk, which is totally fine. What you do is get a little bit more flour, pop the flour on, and again mix it together. So once you've got the consistency, like a ball, what we're going to do is we're going to turn it out onto your work surface. It's quite important to flour the work surface just so it doesn't stick. You just pop a little bit of flour down. And what we're going to look for here is turn it out just into a flat round. It's a good way of getting any stress out, I must say. The nice thing is there's no yeast or anything in this, so it doesn't require a great deal of kneading. You're just really requiring the shape of it. So keep on turning it. And you're wanting it to be about a half an inch thick. So once you've got roughly the size you want it, roughly about half an inch thick, we're going to cut that in 4. And then we're going to take it over to the griddle. So I'll show you the inside of it. So that's what you should be left with just before you pop it onto the griddle or your pan. You can use a spatula for this, but I think I've made sort of about that many times that I'm not too sure of many fingerprints left at this stage, but feel free if you do want to use a spatula to transfer it onto your pan. And we'll leave it there until it roughly doubles in size, but it'll take roughly between 5 and 7 minutes before we turn it. We're approximately 18 minutes in and we have some lovely sodas at the end of it. The important thing when you finish your soda is if you lift it up and you tap it, if you have nails, you can hear it's nice and hollow. Just give it a rap. And that's how you know that your bread is cooked all the way through. Now to make sure that you don't have any doughy parts in the centre of it, it's important to wrap your soda bread in a piece of clean tea towel for roughly 5 minutes beforehand, and it just lets the soda bread come down to a temperature that it isn't too doughy whenever you put your knife through it. So just to recap, as I'm cutting this wee one open, you're looking for a medium heat and it's 5 to 7 minutes on both sides and then a minute on each of the ends. And at the very end, you're left with a nice, fresh, beautiful soda ready to be buttered and eaten.